There are moments in the lives of public figures when scandals, mistakes, or personal downfalls threaten to overshadow everything they've ever built. For Martell Holt, many people assumed that moment had already come. His messy divorce, the explosive cheating scandal that splashed across every headline, and the relentless public humiliation seemed to mark the lowest point of his story. But what if I told you that those highly publicized events were not the true breaking point? What if the real collapse came quietly, after the chaos of headlines died down, after the cameras stopped flashing, and after the gossip blogs moved on? What if the most devastating part of Martell's downfall was not the scandal itself, but what happened after? The slow unraveling of the carefully crafted mask he had worn for years. This is the story of how the illusion of Martell Holt, the illusion of the perfect father, the warrior battling an unjust system, the man of faith and family, began to crumble. And this time, the cracks did not come from critics, bloggers, or former partners. They came from the people closest to him, the very children he claimed to fight for. Children who, with subtle words and small truths, revealed more about Martell than any headline ever could. For years, Martell Holt built his brand not just as a businessman or television personality, but as the image of a father under attack. He positioned himself as a man fighting against an unfair system, a man determined to protect his children against outside forces determined to tear them away. He smiled for cameras at school events, posed for carefully staged family photos, and posted captions that painted him as the father who would never abandon his responsibilities. And for a time, the world believed it. Fans who followed him on social media or watched him on television saw a man full of charm and charisma, someone who looked like he was carrying the weight of the world, but doing it for the right reasons. But behind closed doors, the story was far more complicated. Martell's actions told a different story than his words. When the courts asked for the bare minimum to prove his stability as a parent, therapy sessions, psychological evaluations, and structured parenting guidelines, Martell did not comply. This wasn't about missing an appointment or rescheduling because of a busy calendar. This wasn't about an honest mistake. For more than 2 years, he flatly ignored court orders. Think about that for a moment. 2 years of refusing to participate in the very steps designed to show the court and his children that he was capable of providing stability and care. For most parents in custody disputes, ignoring a judge's orders would result in swift and severe consequences. But somehow, Martell continued to walk a tightrope, publicly presenting himself as the devoted father, while privately disregarding the very measures that could strengthen his relationship with his kids. Fans began to notice, and the questions piled up. Why was he allowed to continue this behavior? Why was he still parading his image of fatherhood on social media while refusing to do the work behind the scenes? Slowly, the whispers of doubt grew louder, and the image he had worked so hard to maintain began to fray. The contradictions became even harder to ignore when people began comparing how Martell treated his children with Melody Shari to how he treated his child with Ariane Curry. On social media, Martell proudly posted photo after photo with Ariane's child, smiling selfies, trips to the park, tender captions about fatherhood and unconditional love. He wanted the world to see those moments, to witness the bond. But when it came to the children he shared with Melody, suddenly everything became about privacy. He stopped posting them, stopped sharing their milestones, and excused the silence by claiming it was for their protection. But fans weren't buying it. The internet has a way of noticing patterns, and the pattern here was unmistakable. One viral comment captured the sentiment perfectly. Is it really privacy or just selective love? Another follower wrote bluntly, he's protecting his image, not his children. The more people looked, the more the inconsistency stood out. This wasn't about safeguarding children from the spotlight, it was about control. Martell wanted to decide how and when his fatherhood was presented, shaping a narrative that suited him while dismissing any reality that did not. The problem was that children don't play by those rules. They live the truth. And in quiet moments, that truth began to emerge. While Martell spun his narrative online, Melody Shari was left to pick up the pieces in real life. She walked into every court hearing, filed every document, and followed every requirement asked of her. None of it was easy. The emotional toll of battling for custody while being dragged through the mud publicly cannot be understated. And yet she did it, not because it was glamorous or because she wanted the spotlight, but because her children needed stability. Martell, in contrast, seemed to treat every hearing as a stage. He turned co-parenting into a war zone, twisting even the simplest exchanges into spectacles. His strategy was clear: paint himself as the victim of a system that didn't value fathers. But over time, his actions betrayed him. The more he tried to weaponize the narrative, the clearer it became that he wasn't fighting for love, he was fighting for control. And while Martell sought attention, Melody sought peace. She didn't match his online energy. She didn't wage war in the comments section. Instead, she chose consistency, discipline, and resilience. That quiet strength became its own story, and people began to rally around her. To many, Melody symbolized what it looks like to endure chaos without letting it define you. On Instagram, Martell turned his profile into a chessboard. Inspirational quotes one day, cryptic posts the next, thinly veiled insults aimed at critics, and even Melody. For a while, the illusion held. But cracks are inevitable, and children often see what adults try to hide. As Martell's kids grew older, they began to notice. They noticed who was really there for them during quiet nights. They noticed who showed up when cameras weren't around. They noticed who comforted them when nightmares woke them up, who remembered the small details of their lives, and who simply posted about being a father versus who actually was one. These realizations don't always come in loud declarations. They come in small moments, subtle remarks, and quiet confessions. But when those small truths surface, they carry a weight no Instagram caption can erase. And then came the blow that destroyed any remaining illusion: a guilty plea for domestic violence. This wasn't speculation or gossip. This was legal fact. Martell had been convicted. He appealed, trying to delay the inevitable, but in August 2025, the hammer fell again. A second guilty plea confirmed the reality. The charismatic father figure who built a brand around devotion to his children now carried the label of domestic violence offender. The contradiction was too severe to overlook. The illusion of the perfect father collapsed, and no amount of spin could bring it back. Now, as October approaches, the stage is set for the most important trial of Martell Holt's life: the custody battle. And this isn't just another court date. It is the culmination of years of defiance, manipulation, and contradiction. Judges don't need to be swayed by Instagram posts or motivational speeches. They don't need long explanations. They have patterns, records, and evidence. And Martell's record is damning. 2 harassment convictions, years of ignoring court orders, appeals that seemed more like weapons against Melody than genuine attempts to protect their children. The cost of this behavior has been staggering. Thousands of dollars in legal fees, child support arrears, court penalties, failed appeals, reimbursements owed to Melody. What was once a promising empire of real estate ventures, motivational branding, and television appearances has dwindled into a crumbling facade. Deals stall, opportunities vanish, public appearances dwindle into awkward cameos that no longer inspire. Even his motivational posts, once filled with eager engagement, now ring hollow, met with skepticism instead of admiration. While Martell spirals, Melody continues to rise. Her life is not perfect, no one's is, but she has found a path forward that doesn't rely on illusions. She is raising 4 children, building a career, and expanding her brand. Every time Martell creates a storm, Melody turns it into a stepping stone. She has become more than just a reality TV star. She has become a symbol of resilience. Her fans rally around her not because she is flawless, but because she has endured the kind of public battle that would break most people and found a way to keep moving. This contrast has only amplified Martell's downfall. While he clings to perception, Melody builds reality. While he seeks control, she seeks growth. And in that difference lies the most painful truth of all. The very resilience that Martell once dismissed has become the proof that she is the parent capable of providing the consistency their children need. Even those who once stood by Martell have begun to step back. Marcel Scott, never shy about his opinions, has openly called Martell's drama exhausting. Maurice and Kimmy, who once tried to play peacemakers, have stopped softening their words. Even Wanda, whose blunt remarks have always made waves, has lobbed criticisms sharp enough to pierce Martell's carefully guarded ego. The message is clear. Martell is no longer just in conflict with Melody, he is in conflict with almost everyone around him. His allies are tired, his support system shrinking, and his isolation growing. However, when Melody moved to Atlanta, life immediately became more complicated. With no consistent babysitter and no reliable support system, she found herself taking care of the children around the clock. She admitted it was difficult to work, to step out for events, or even find moments for herself. The responsibility was constant. The kids were with her 24/7. But while Melody was shouldering the burden of single motherhood, Martell continued to present himself as a devoted dad fighting against an unfair system. His narrative was that society, and by extension, the courts, fans, and even Melody, had it out for him. He positioned himself as a victim, a man wrongly criticized when all he wanted was to be there for his kids. To many fans watching Love and Marriage Huntsville, it seemed believable at first. After all, Martell was often seen smiling with his children, attending family events, and playing the role of the family man. But reality has a way of seeping through even the strongest performance, and in Martell's case, his children themselves began to subtly reveal the cracks. The turning point wasn't explosive. It wasn't a dramatic fight caught on camera or a bold admission from Martell himself. Instead, it was the quiet, unfiltered honesty of children. In one scene, Martell's kids corrected him about who cooked dinner. He insisted he had made the meal, but the kids laughed and told the truth. No, actually, Mom cooked it. It was a small moment, almost playful, but it spoke volumes. In a single sentence, they stripped away a piece of Martell's carefully crafted image. Children don't have agendas. They don't conspire to damage reputations. Their honesty is pure and unfiltered. And in those small corrections, those unscripted comments, Martell's illusion of being the perfect involved father began to unravel. Fans noticed, insiders noticed, and soon, even Martell couldn't control the narrative. The courts, of course, weren't fooled by image or charm. Behind the scenes, judges looked at Martell's actual behavior. He was given explicit instructions: attend therapy, undergo a psychological evaluation, and demonstrate his stability as a parent. These were not optional suggestions. They were mandatory steps to prove he could prioritize his children's needs over his pride. But instead of complying, he resisted. He delayed, deflected, and ignored the orders. To many, this was shocking. Here was a man claiming he was fighting for his children, yet he refused to do the very things required to be a better father for them. Melody, on the other hand, followed the rules. She remained steady. She fulfilled her obligations to the court without making a spectacle of it online. While Martell fought against accountability, Melody quietly built stability. This contrast did not go unnoticed. Fans began to question Martell's intentions. Was he really fighting for custody out of love for his children? Or was it simply another attempt to control Melody and the narrative surrounding their breakup? The inconsistency in Martell's behavior became even clearer when comparing how he treated his children with Melody versus his son with Arian Curry.
On social media, Martell proudly displayed photos of Maverick, the son he shared with Arian. He posted openly, smiling, celebrating fatherhood. But when it came to his children with Melody, suddenly privacy was the excuse. Suddenly there were rules about what could and couldn't be shared. Fans saw through it. The issue wasn't protection, it was power. By controlling what was shown and what wasn't, Martell could attempt to shape the narrative. He could portray himself as the victim, manipulate public opinion, and use the children as pawns in a larger game. But here's the problem with illusions. Eventually, they collapse. And when the truth comes out, no amount of social media posts or staged photos can cover it up. As Martell's children grew older, they became harder to influence. They could see for themselves who showed up, who followed through, and who consistently provided stability. They weren't toddlers who could be distracted with toys or reassured with vague promises. They saw who picked them up from school. They saw who tucked them in at night. They saw who was there to hug them when they cried. And over time, their loyalty, which Martell once took for granted, began to shift. Some of the children started to subtly express their frustrations, not in public statements or interviews, but in private comments, in small interactions that revealed how they were really feeling. Those words spread quietly, and soon the image of Martell as the heroic father was replaced with a much harsher reality.
Then came the final blow, a charge of domestic abuse. Unlike rumors or gossip, this was a legal matter with real consequences. Martell pled guilty. He tried to appeal, believing he could outmaneuver the system the same way he tried to outmaneuver public opinion. But the appeal failed, and he was forced to enter a second guilty plea. This was a devastating moment. For the first time, Martell wasn't just losing in the court of public opinion, he was losing in an actual courtroom. The law was now against him. And with a custody trial looming, the timing couldn't have been worse. Judges don't just listen to words, they examined patterns of behavior, and Martell's record spoke for itself. Ignored court orders, legal convictions, and repeated defiance. The image of a devoted father crumbled under the weight of evidence. While Martell's empire collapsed, Melody's star continued to rise. She launched a music career, expanded her businesses, and built a brand rooted in resilience and stability. Fans saw her consistency. She wasn't perfect, but she was steady. And in the eyes of both supporters and critics, that stability spoke louder than Martell's chaos ever could. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. Martell thrived on drama while Melody focused on peace. He posted cryptic messages and Bible verses, followed by petty insults. She kept her energy on her children and her future. The difference wasn't just visible, it was undeniable. Even Martell's peers began to distance themselves. Co-stars like Marceau Scott and Maurice Scott openly criticized his behavior. Kimmy Scott, usually the voice of reason, could no longer overlook his patterns. Miss Wanda, known for her bold and messy remarks, had words too harsh for Martell to handle. Even Destiny Payton, once close to him, grew tired of defending his choices. The fans also shifted. Once, Martell had supporters who believed his narrative, but over time, encouragement turned into skepticism. Comments filled with support were replaced by side eyes and questions. How could a man who claimed to value family spend more time fighting in court than being present for his kids? The most heartbreaking part of this entire saga is not Martell's fall from grace or even Melody's rise. It's the children. They have been caught in the middle of a storm they did not create. They have witnessed arguments, manipulation, and instability. They've carried emotional wounds that will follow them into adulthood. And while Melody fights not just for custody but for peace, Martell seems intent on reliving the same destructive patterns. The greatest loss Martell faces is not financial ruin or public humiliation. It's the slow, painful withdrawal of his children's trust. Kids can sense when love has conditions. They know when peace lives in one house and chaos in another. And once that trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. So here we are. October 15th isn't just another court date. It's the culmination of years of pride, denial, and refusal to change. For Martell, it could mean restricted visitation, supervised visits, or mandatory parenting classes. For Melody, it's another step toward stability. For the children, it's a defining moment in how they'll understand family, love, and trust. The mask has come off. The world now sees what Melody and the kids have always known. This was never about family. It was always about power. And now October 15th looms. This is not just another chapter in Martell Holt's story. It is the defining moment. The question is no longer whether he can spin a narrative, win over fans, or charm his way through interviews. The question is whether he can prove to a court of law that he is capable of being a safe, stable father. Judges will not be swayed by gym selfies or hashtags about growth. They will not be impressed by carefully worded captions. They will be looking at years of documented defiance, 2 guilty pleas, and a clear pattern of behavior. For Melody, the strategy has always been consistency. For Martell, the strategy has always been denial. And when the gavel finally falls, it is consistency, not denial, that wins. So here's the question. Has Martell Holt already lost the battle he fought so hard to stage, or will he find a way to spin even this downfall into another illusion? One thing is certain. Truth is patient, truth is relentless, and truth always wins. Like this video if you believe the kids deserve peace above all else, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind the headlines.